Adapting to a new environment is one of life's universal challenges. And generally speaking, the bigger the change in environment, the bigger the struggle, which is to say, the bigger the opportunity to test and develop your character. In today's podcast, I talked to a 22-year-old man who was born in England, moved to Egypt at the age of 7, moved to Sudan at the age of 14, and is now a university student in Ireland. Living in these 4 countries helped him shape a perspective of life, a perspective that is mature beyond his years. First off, I'm going to start with perhaps the most obvious thing. You were the first person I have had on my podcast who I didn't know until you came on screen, and
Lovely.
I'm being introduced to you today. So we had corresponded via WhatsApp. Kian had 3-4 weeks ago said, "Hey, Dad, I have this person I think that would be good for you to get on a podcast, and I'll always take Kian's recommendations."
Yeah.
I want to say that I don't necessarily want him to hear that, but yes, I will
He's
take
gonna hear it. He's gonna hear it now.
Yes, perhaps. Maybe that's the part I do edit out. So I called him yesterday and I said, "Here's something that's important to me." I said, I see how to spell it because he sent it to me, but can you tell me how to say his name correctly? And Kian said, "I just discovered that I've been mispronouncing his name, so I can't tell you." So, so the first thing I'm going to ask you is, when I read your name, I had said, because I was saying it to my wife, I'm doing a podcast, and apologies for this that I'm going to get it wrong, but I said Wassil, and so how do you pronounce it?
Believe it or not, I think you've said it better than a lot of people that I've met here in Europe. To be honest with you, it's Wassil, just Wassil, and it's an Arabic name that means to arrive. Wassil.
You're 22, and you're in. And tell me if I'm wrong here. That you're 22 and you're in second year of a university. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am now. Yeah, I'm in Dublin Trinity right now.
Okay, and what are you studying?
I do business. I do a major in business and a minor in politics. Best, basically.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah. So I grew up in the UK only until the age of 7. So we lived in Northampton. Yeah, my mom had left Luton Town, which is where she was raised, around Bedford area, to Northampton. So I had lived there until I was 7. And then, my father, bless him. So he had immigrated to the UK, did his education here at one point and then went back to Sudan. So we had left England to Egypt to be close to him. We didn't move to Sudan just yet. So we moved to Egypt when I was 7.
All right, let me back up there just so I can make sure I follow it, because you just introduced your dad as the topic. So your mom is from Kashmir. Is that correct?
Yes, she is, yeah.
Okay,
yes,
I just want to, let's just see if I'm listening. You can point out when I don't. And I have been accused of not being able to. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing podcasts now and focusing on listening. It's a skill I need to develop. And then your dad is from Sudan. Is that
Sudanese, correct? Yes, that's correct, yes. And, you don't really see this in a lot of cultures. Like, I'd like to highlight, in our culture, Sudanese culture, it's usually a Sudanese marrying a Sudanese. And, African families are very, keen on just a Sudanese man being with a Sudanese woman. And a Pakistani family are keen on a woman being with a Pakistani man. But for them to get married, it was big, it was the talk of the town.
Up until the age of 7, you're raised in the UK. And your dad is goes back to Sudan to work. And how frequently does he come back?
From what I remember, obviously being 0 to 7, I don't remember much, but, I do remember a lot I do remember a lot. I'm quite blessed to say I remember quite a lot from my childhood. I do remember him visiting at least probably once every 6, 7, 8 months. I do remember him, talking about this with us. that aside, I remember asking her, being alone, who did you rely on for advice? What were you doing? What not, what not? Obviously, she
Right.
had family in Luton, but she had formed she had to really put herself out there socially to make friends and do things because she's not really familiar with stepping out like that. She did that. So I would say it was hard for her, it was hard for her. She did tell me it was very hard for her, but she did a good job, I'd like to say she did a good job.
You moved to Egypt because Egypt is right, for those who don't know, who have not looked at a map or just unfamiliar, Egypt is right above Sudan. And so your
Yeah.
dad wanted you to move closer so it was easier for him to come and visit while he was building up the business in Sudan. That correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That is indeed correct.
I just have a question. I was thinking about this. Why didn't he just have you go to Sudan?
You know what? I asked that question as well. And what did he say to me? I asked him this question a long time ago. And he
Okay.
was like, I did it. And it's just a father thing. I think you'll probably relate to it. He was like, I wanted you guys to have quite in your, transformational years to have a good experience, at least, enjoy it a bit, live a bit comfortable and whatnot, whatnot. So I was like, that's fair enough. Because Sudan obviously is it's quite rough. It's quite rough no matter where you are. It requires someone of strong wit to be there, if anything. So I
Okay.
respect him for that.
Right.
But so yeah, so in Egypt I had studied in a school called the British School, believe it or not. English boy,
Yes.
straight to the British school. Don't know if you've heard about that school, but anywho, I joined that school in second grade, I think it was, or was it third grade? And I had stayed there until I think so, second grade till fourth grade. I can't lie to you and say I remember much, but what I do remember is being very different from those kids. The Arabic, the language barrier. Even though they spoke a bit of English, at the end of the day, they're born in Egypt and raised there. They speak Arabic. They amongst their peers. I was
So
always left out in a way.
most of the students were from
Egypt.
Egypt who went to
Yeah,
it,
believe it
and
or
then they
not. Yeah,
were
yeah,
and then they
yeah.
were going to the English speaking school. Was it that the goal was that by the time they get done with secondary that they would attend a UK university? Is that
I think
the end?
a few of them. I think from what obviously now grown up, I've seen a few of them did move to the UK. A few of them stayed behind, but I feel like I wouldn't know, but their parents putting them in that system probably was to make the English better. Being in that
Okay.
environment. But
Right.
they did speak a good amount of English. I do remember it was a good amount. Obviously, it wasn't to the standard that I was at. It's different, but they were good. They were good. Intermediates, I'd say. But yes, so second year to fourth year, I don't remember it clearly, but it was okayish. It was all right, just adapting to Egypt. And then after that, again, it was another switch for me. It's like once I'm adapting to the system, I'm moving again. Now I'm moving to
Okay.
another school. Yeah, I just had no friends really in 50th year. I remember that quite well. I had met one guy I remember very well, and I want to give him a quick shout out. He was in ninth grade at the time. So again, like I said, I had associated with quite a lot of elders as I was younger. So his name was Taddy Wanashe. He's from Zimbabwe, and he was, I think, one of the nicest people to me when I first got there. He kind of
Right.
took me in like little brother, and he's still in my life today. So that's the one good thing that came out of 50th year.
And what
Yeah.
advice I'm just curious, what advice did he dispense? What was he, 4 or 5 years older than you? Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And what
Okay.
I do remember him telling me, it was, and I am never going to forget it. He's like, you have someone here. Just know that you're not alone in it. That's the one thing he said to me, I remember it vividly. And he's like, I've got you, but just also, be kind to everyone around you. Don't feel like you're excluding them, even though you feel excluded. Try to be that nice guy. Try to be out there. I was like, as a freaking 10-year-old, I'm like, I remember I don't think I understood a word, but we had this conversation quite recently, and yeah, man, I obviously now it holds value. No,
So,
no,
how
no, it's
did you
good.
meet the challenge of a fifth grader who was struggling through the day?
As funny as it sounds, yeah, obviously I would never really go back to my mother and be like, "Oh, mom, this is happening in school." Like, I can't lie. I would just quote unquote what we say as youngsters, charge it. I would just be like, "It is what it is. It's just another day. I'm gonna get by." So I remember, naturally, I don't remember how this happened, but I had formed a group of people that were just like me. I had an
Hmm.
Indian, a Korean, and an American Egyptian who was kind of like me, moving from America to Egypt. He's Egyptian, but he didn't fit in, and we just
Right.
became one little group. You get me? In my age group, you get me? And no one used to like us. I'll be honest with you. The Egyptians did not want to hang around an Indian, a Sudanese, and some next American kid that is quote unquote Egyptian, but to them not really Egyptian. So I can't lie. We were just always sticking together, and
You were a group of outcasts. You had that in
a
common.
group of outcasts. That's what we had in common, and we relied on one another. Life gets a bit better. So I've now formed this little group. I have my little people, but the Egyptians kind of like me now because I've tried with them and I've tried to get
Right.
involved with them. And my Arabic now at this point has, I wouldn't say improved, but I can have a conversation with you. I could get by now at this point. And seventh grade comes, and it reaches a stage where this Indian kid now didn't do what I did. He didn't want to branch out. He didn't want to talk to people, and he now was reliant on me. I'm not trying to say it in a way, but he was now kind of reliant on me. And I can't lie, now that I look back on it, fucked up move for me, but like, I then started to disassociate gradually because he was affecting me. You get me? So I gradually disassociated because he would come fuck up things for me when I was around other people. Do you get me? Because growing up, it's like, bro, I never really had people like that. Now I do. I'm balancing it with you and you, but I don't think, my group that I was in liked the fact that I had now had another group in a way. Does that make sense? So it was
Yeah,
a bit of a sticky one.
and it is when you're growing up, it's a struggle with, particularly when you look back, the
Yeah,
idea
bro.
of, well, I didn't hit that ideal, and I go, well, who does? And you're struggling
Yeah.
and you're trying to navigate your way through life, and particularly friends at 12, 13, 14. I,
Heavy.
I don't know anybody who could look back when they were that age or a teenager and go, I was a real asshole to that person, and I shouldn't have been. But in
Yeah, I
your
was.
at the time, yeah, I
I'm
always
not,
say,
bro.
at the end of the day, we're all struggling through it, and we'd just like to go to bed with some dignity in hand. And
Do you get
so,
me? Exactly that,
yes,
man. Imagine, yeah. So it was
yeah.
that was the case in a way. So I can't lie. It reached a stage where I just started treating this guy like pure trash. Like I'd make fun of him as well with the people. I look back at it and I take accountability now, and I freaking hate myself for it.
So we know that you eventually get accepted by this group who's
Yeah,
excluding
man.
you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you are at this age of 22, to go back 10 years or 9, 10 years, and you have this, before you start excluding a former friend, what advice would you say to, as a 22-year-old, what would you say to that 12-year-old?
Can't lie, man. I think I'd sit with him and I'd just be like, listen, um, always remember how you felt when, when put in a certain situation. If you meet someone that's just like you, no matter where you go in life, never forget them. If they've never done you wrong, never did anything, bad to you or harmed you in any way, despite how people viewed them, you stick by that person. At the end of the day, loyalty is a big thing, no matter what, and you have to stand by that. If that person was there for you at tough times, he should be able to see the good times with you as well. I could tell this part of my life until now very vividly. So
Okay.
from being in Egypt in a very comfortable environment, obviously, dealing with being an outclassed, an outsider in my school world where you're mostly, where a kid is mostly every day, his school world, I always felt excluded and whatnot, right?
Right.
So going from being excluded to accepted in an environment where I can't lie, we should say where even I was saying I was Egyptian, to moving to a country where now I'm 14, life is going good for me. Everything's on track now. And it's like I'm moving to Sudan and I'm moving from being comfortable to now being thrown into the deep end. You get me?
Right.
Sudan it's a rough place. Like even I'm grateful to say my father, he moved us into a good home and all. But when I don't want to say in a thuggish way, but when you're outside on those streets, it humbles you as a man. It makes you a man. So my dad, when I remember moving, I'm never going to forget my first day. We were in a little apartment and we had arrived, no electricity. Straight up,
Right.
no electricity. Electricity had been cut. There's no water. I could see this. We have this word in Arabic called bermil. Bermil is, a big, where you fill up water in like this big jug. I don't know what it's called. A bucket. It's a bucket. So,
Yes.
and I'm saying, he's telling me this is what I shower with when there's no water. And I'm like, this is odd, man. I ain't used to this. I'm not used to this, man. I'm not used to this.
Particularly at 14, because that's about the age where you decide you want to start taking showers.
And this environment I'm in now is so different, Uncle Scott. This place I'm in now is completely different. I'm 14
Right.
now. I know Arabic, but Arabic has many different dialects.
Right.
The Egyptian Arabic is not the same as the Sudanese dialect. And keep in mind, I'm a Sudanese boy, and I'm moving to Sudan now, and I have an Egyptian dialect, and so I'm speaking like an Egyptian. These boys are looking at me like, who is this stupid idiot? You get me? Like, who the hell are you? Do you get me?
No, it's just that you get in 5th grade, you begin. You're in Egypt, and you go through this hell, and then you get this tight-knit group of outcasts, and then you work your way, you struggle, you get to 7th grade, and you're going through a mall, and you're able to speak the language now. And I know you mentioned that you're one of the friends who was an outcast. You had distanced yourself from him, and we can all think when we're 12, we probably weren't at the highest ethical point of our lives.
No.
And you work through all that stuff, and then you finally get in with a group, and you get acceptance, and then you learn, you work at learning and developing Arabic, but it's Egyptian Arabic, and then you go to Sudan, and it's that reminder that you are the other again. You are the outsider.
Exactly.
And let me be clear that wherever you go in the world, there will be prejudice, and we're ready to bring it on to you right now.
Exactly that. It's a harsh world we live in, man. It's a daunting world, man. You have to be ready.
You got to struggle, and that's the thing. You will struggle,
that's what makes
but it will exactly, and it will develop you. But you got to take it on. But that's a lot.
I have to repeat the year. Obviously, I had failed 9th grade, and I'm going into a new system once again. So at this stage, I've been through, SATs, GCSEs, and now I'm jumping into an IB system. So I was very upset with that. I remember complaining. I'm like, bro, I'm always shifting between systems, and bro, it's hard for me. Like, I'm always learning something new, and I want to stick to something. But it wasn't my parents' fault at the end of the day. It is what it is. So I remember joining now. I'm in 9th grade again, and this is where I meet the people that are still with me till today. So I remember joining in 9th grade. At this point, I had took up boxing. I'm already a couple of months in. My mom introduced me to it. It was a way for me to, deal with what I was dealing with in school. I didn't know how to fight. The bullying was getting to me. I was having, a bit riff-raff with my father. It was all fucking with me. And my mom was like, have you heard of Rocky? I'm like, nah, what the hell is that? So I guess my generation, but I'm going to put you onto that. She puts me onto it. I watched Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and I loved it. And then at that time, Creed had come out, the first one.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to say. So you're talking about the original Rocky from 1976.
Yes. Yeah, those ones. Right, yes. So, the Rocky with Sylvester Stallone.
I saw that when I was 9 years old. So yes.
Wow. You know it very well.
I'm well aware of it. Yes. And that 100%. Was a big thing.
So I took up boxing, and I'm joining the school. I'm a bit buffed up now. I'm a bit big. I feel like that guy. So I joined the school. I'm like, no one's going to fuck with me here. I'm not accepting that. No one's fucking with me. So I joined the school.
Rocky, and you get the boxing training.
I did, yeah. I joined the gym. At this point, it had been a couple of months, and I loved it so much that I taught myself my first 3 months of boxing I did at home. I taught myself the basics for 3 months every day because I was so passionate about it. So I joined the school now. Very good school. Again, reputation is important.
Let me stop you there. Let's talk about the boxing for a second.
Please,
one thing I recommend to any young man or any parent who has a young man developing into a man is to do some sort of either boxing or martial art.
100%.
Kian did Muay Thai, and I would when he would get home from that, and we'd have the pads, and he'd be hitting that, and I got punched a few times and hit a few times accidentally most of the time, I think, and I believe it was.
Same,
but
I think.
Let's talk about. So when you go, what do you get out of that? Beyond, okay, and when I say that, what do you, there's the thing where when you're 13, 14, 15, and that's when boys are getting bigger and there's more and more pushing. I always say that if I'm in Ireland and I'm at a watching 4 or 5 boys at a bus stop. They're all play fighting and pushing the boundaries where it's play fighting and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So you want to learn it for that reason, to defend yourself
Yes.
and be able to
Yes.
respond appropriately. In other words, when I say respond appropriately, you want to hit back and you want to hit back
Yeah.
and you want the exactness in your punch to hurt the person who just punched you.
Certainly.
So that's what I mean
Yeah.
by that. But other than that, when you are in the gym, who are you working with? Who are the coaches? What are you getting from them?
So my Coach Matthew, he he was the owner of the gym, and he was the main coach. He had another coach called Bashindi, and that gym for me became home.
Right.
Like that was the place I look forward to going to after school. Oh God, it felt like home because I was going somewhere where I could express myself, but I'm doing it with my hands. I'm letting it all out. And these coaches, you know how they say, your coach is like your fathers, like your brothers, like your uncle, all in one. That place, that Coach Matthew, I consider him a father, an uncle, a brother, everything in one. Because I'd go there and he's teaching me how to fight.
So when you talked about the boxing the last time, you talked about it teaching you discipline, and
Yeah.
in the sense that when you first started boxing, you went in and got in the ring, and it was just if I'm not characterizing it right, forgive me, but it was just a lot of aggression, a lot of emotion, and all that stuff. But what your coaches took. It said, "Hey, you can swing some punches, but you're never going to go far unless you actually have discipline with this." So, can you speak to the idea of discipline in anything, whether it's boxing or martial arts? I know you're doing boxing, but I know that in martial arts it applies too. So, could you talk to that?
Yes, it does. I think it's understanding the power that you attain, being able to defend yourself, being able to fight it's a skill in itself. So and it puts you above the average man, the average person, you're trained to be able to defend yourself in any circumstance. So when you acquire that and you're practicing that and you're getting good at that, you cannot leave that gym with the mentality thinking, okay, I am better than the average man. I will kill anyone that's in my way, or anyone that disrespects me, or anyone. No, that's not how the world works. The world doesn't work like that. In the world, you must command respect. And in order to command respect, you must respect yourself first. And you must understand, what you give, what you are, you must understand your strengths as a person. So in the gym, knowing that you could fight, you could throw a punch, you know how to knock someone out, or, throw a certain punch that could get someone a certain way, you need to be also understanding that, hey, I can't injure this person. I need to hold back as well. So, like, I know this is corny, but with great power comes great responsibility. You know how to fight, you have great power, you have responsibility. But when I
Right.
joined this new school, I knew I could fight, but coming with what I had experienced in the old school, I was like, hey, I'm going to assert my dominance from the get-go. I came in wearing tight shirts, a bit fit at 15. I'm meeting all these kids in my class, and I'm seeing them, they're scrawny. It's basically what I was just a year ago. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, I'm not going to bully these kids. Like, my mindset was like, I'm not going to come here and bully. Like, I'm going to, I don't want people to go through what I went through. So I joined the school, and I just, apparently from what I was told, and, as I've gotten older now, I was a complete dickhead. Like, apparently I was, though. I didn't even realize that, I came across as this boxer. I came across as this boxer that knew how to fight, and yeah, if you fuck with me, I fuck with you.
You just set that up. The way that the narrative was building was that it sounded as if I dealt with all this stuff, and
Nah,
I
I
went
thought
to
I did.
I went to the boxing ring. Lessons were instilled. Yes, I learned the physical skills, but I learned some mental things. I learned to control
Yeah,
emotions. And then I went to this school, and because I could empathize with getting my ass kicked, I was this role model. Then you followed up like, I was a real
I thought.
dickhead,
Yeah, bro, I was. I didn't
which is
even
far
clock
more
it.
realistic about what happens most of the time, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. You see it a lot in your life. It does happen like that. Ends up being like that. You become someone you hate, kind of. But yeah, that happens. And I'll tell you now. in that school, because the people that were there, they were a bit on the softer side. Like, I'll be honest, the school I first went to in Sudan, these kids were, they were rough, man. Like, they're used to being there. They grew up in Sudan most of their lives. They've been on the streets of Sudan. They've navigated their way through life at a very young age. Sudan humbles you, makes you, I could like to say, you learn to become a man at a very young age being in a country like Sudan. So those kids I was around in that old school kind of like that. In this new school, though, I can't lie, people were soft. People were soft. The people in my grade were soft, They were soft, and the school was a bit more open to, just being accepted. Because in my old school, if you had a certain length of hair, you're shaving that off, and you're getting sent home or whatnot.
So you finally find a place since the age
Imagine.
since me. So having to learn, having to work through, having to struggle to get accepted in Egypt, and then you struggle in Sudan, and then you finally get to a place where you'll be accepted, and then things don't work out because they're accepting.
Imagine that. How crazy is that? That's the environment we're in, yeah. But I'll tell you, it kind of worked in my favor. It kind of did. I'll tell you how. So obviously,
you weren't getting your ass kicked every day. That's how it worked in your favor.
I was not. No, facts. I wasn't getting my ass kicked.
That's a big one.
It's a big one. I think it's the main one. But I'll be honest with you though. I'll tell you this though. The school had a lot of young kids. It's a new school. In IB there's this. They usually go through this MYP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had joined in MYP 4, and the kids below us were actual kids though. Like, I'll be honest, they were 12, 11, 13, 14, but they were proper kids. So when I saw those kids, I know it sounds corny, but I took it upon me to be there for kids because I was the kid that wasn't there for. Do you get me? So I kind of used my power the right way. Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I took that. I was like, if I could fight, I'm not going to allow these kids to get hurt. I'll protect them. That's how I was just, I don't know, just how I was. But in my own class though, I was causing havoc, man.
You're telling me that you were learning these lessons at the boxing gym, and taking on that when you have that responsibility. But at the same time, you told me that you were, when you were a little bit later in school, I don't know, was it 15 or 16, and you've started to develop
16.
Okay, you developed, and you were really good with the younger students. You were providing mentorship. There was empathy. Man. I understand what it was like to be the other. I understand what it's to be excluded.
Man.
I am going to be that person for you. But in your own environment, you said, and the word that you referred to yourself was as a dickhead, that you were going around thinking you were the man who was going to be kicking some butt and all that stuff. That's correct,
man.
Right?
Yeah, man.
Now, but what I want to know then, based on what you just said, how did you not apply? And I'm not getting on you, by the way. I'm just trying to investigate for those people who are 15 and 16 who watch this and want to reflect a little bit and want to learn some stuff about being a better person from some of the mistakes we made. And I mean, when you say this, I'm right there with you. So this is no criticism of you. I'm just trying to understand.
100%. Oh, yeah, no.
You were in there and you were being a jerk to other people, but at the same time, at the boxing gym, you were learning these lessons. So why were those lessons not holding true for your contemporary? For the people around you, but they were holding true for dealing with younger people. Can you talk to that?
So
how were you dealing with that?
I can.
Okay, that's what I want.
Such a
what I want to hear.
Uncle Scott, such a good question. Such a good question. So from that, obviously, he told me about what you're learning, discipline and power, respect, and the one thing I took quite to heart is to command your respect. Make sure people respect you, but don't fear you. But I feel like as a 15-year-old kid, with all, having experienced, being bullied and, not accepted and all, and then learning about commanding respect, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into this new environment where people don't know me after being kicked out of that school and command my freaking respect, man. So I go in there wearing a nice tight green shirt, tight, joggers. I look buff, and I'm going into the school and I think I'm that guy. So I think my first impression with everyone was, Yeah, and I remember even them telling me like this guy's a complete nonce. No, sorry, no. That's UK slang. You have to cut that out. That's UK. That's boy slang. But oh my god, complete dickhead. You get me? But that's what they said to me. You're complete nonce, dickhead, whatnot. In the UK, nonce is basically like obviously you know what that means. I think everyone does. But as with boys, we'd be like it's like a dickhead thing to say. But anyways, yeah, they just said I
Okay.
was a dickhead. So, but yeah, nah, bro. I didn't do a good job with that at all. And I look back at it now, and I didn't. It's just I commanded my respect the wrong way.
Okay. Now, what age were you when the Sudanese Revolution happened? Or is it the Sudan? Do I call
Ooh.
it Sudan Revolution? Sudanese? I guess that.
No,
that
Sudanese Revolution, I think, is
yeah.
the correct term.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so it started in December or November of 2018. So I was like 16, man.
What year was
16,
that?
2018, I think is when it started, towards the end of 2018. So I was freshly 16 when it kick-started, and when it ended, I was halfway through 16, I would say. Mm-mm.
So pre-revolution, your
Yeah.
daily life, I'm assuming, is just your daily life. You're going to school and friends and
Yeah,
places
yeah,
you
yeah,
go and
yeah.
things like that. But when the revolution began, did it go from 0 to 60 that everything's calm this one weekend and then the next weekend
I
things are
just,
incredibly
yeah.
dangerous? Or is it gradual? I mean, what is
I would
that
like to
like for a
say
teenager?
I can't. I'd like to say it was gradual because you're seeing, like I said, Sudan has, again, third world country. We're used to the power cuts, the water cuts, but things are getting expensive in a country like that. People are getting visibly pissed off. Ways of life are not easy. And then on a random Saturday, I think it was, you're hearing news of the city, one of the outskirts of Sudan called Abbara. And then I can't remember that one of the headquarters got set on fire by the people there now protesting. And then it just spreads throughout the whole country. And then boom, that's it. Now protests are happening. Police forces are on the streets shooting people with tear gas. And, it just 1 week, this all transpires. People, that's it now. It's like all this gradual anger has just exploded now. That's it.
Right.
December
And
2018 just goes crazy.
that was in the spring of 2019.
Yeah.
When did things reopen? When did you go back to school? And when did you get back on track to what would
Ooh.
be considered normal?
Um, Believe it or not, I think after this guy had been overthrown and, his replacement was overthrown within a day, I remember being there at the military headquarters, celebrating after we'd overthrown the next guy within a day. At that stage now, we're accepting, okay, now that's it, a new government's going to come in. I remember them announcing schools are going to open again. So we go back to school. I don't know if haven't got it correct, but May, June time of 2019. And then summer comes and then we're just, I remember we had to finish that year off quite quickly. We had like a couple of months to finish off school. We did. And then we started school again straight after, like October, I think it was, or September. And we're going into our new year. The country's a bit okay now. It gets worse though. It gets worse. But yeah, if you want me to
Okay.
elaborate more, I can. But we'll get
Well,
into that.
but as far as your personal journey, while all this stuff's going on, by the time you go back to school, how old are you? What, 16? You have a couple of years
I
of.
think I'm 16 now. I'm 16 now. I turned 16 in December of 2018. It was now late December. So all this had transpired now when I was 16. And then I'm going
Okay.
into, yeah, 10th grade
And
when I was 16, I think.
so, do you finish high school in Sudan?
I do. I do finish high
Or
school
is
in
it called
Sudan.
secondary school? In the States, it's called high
It
school. And
was, yeah, no, secondary school in it. But
uh,
again, it
uh,
was interrupted in 2020 now, just not long after this whole thing. Obviously, COVID had hit,
right.
but I mean, COVID played quite a significant role, but not as much. We were still out on the streets. Me personally, I was still going out. I caught COVID, still went out. Caused, oh god, it was heavy. That's Africa, man. No one really cared like that. But schools were shut down for a period of time. I remember my GCSEs that were taking place in May were pushed to October of 2020, and then
Right.
that was a period where school had. I mean, I finished 11th grade now at this point, but our GCSE exams were postponed to a later date. So within that summer, it was just I can't lie. The country's okay now. People are accepting that the military's in power. There's a few revolting, but it wasn't as bad as it was in 2019. But
Right.
we're just getting used to life now with the military rule in the country. And I do my exams in October, and then I'm ready to leave Sudan, but I don't yet. So I remember answering the phone, And they're like, in Arabic, he says to me, one of my boys, Al Baraka Fikum, which means my condolences. I'm like, what happened? He's like, do you know this guy? And they read his social media tag, on Instagram, we have a social media name. And
Right.
he says it, and I'm like, I start laughing. I'm like, huh? Like, what's happening here? So Usman, I had met him in 2016 when I freshly moved to Sudan in a gathering. Just one day I was out, and he was the first British person, I would say, like myself, Sudanese, in Sudan that I had ever met. So I kind of resonated with this person. We got along very well, and we had planned to meet up multiple times, multiple occasions, but it would just never fall through. So
Right.
the one time it was supposed to fall through was a week before his death. I remember him
Right.
texting me, I don't know, we were just talking, and we had agreed to meet up after Ramadan because he had a holiday. And I can't lie, I remember that week prior, my mom was like, I don't want you leaving the house, the country's a bit unstable. But I had told her the one time I'm leaving this house would be to go meet this boy, and I was very excited for that. So
Right.
May 11th comes, I get that call, and I didn't want to accept it. I go downstairs to my pops, and I'm like, yo, I think one of my boys has gotten killed.
Well, one of the things that if you have never dealt with death death of someone your own age when you're young. I mean, when it's the cycle that your grandparents die, you accept that because you know people die and you know
People die, man.
this is the cycle of life. But
Yeah,
when
yeah.
people die before they're old, that it's a real wake up call to mortality. And it's when I was the poster behind me, which that's Ken Thompson, the director of the Boys Club, and when I was in sixth grade, we were on a trip, and there was an accident with the fifth graders, and the fifth graders, they were in a van, and four of them immediately died, and I think three or four more in the next year died. And I'm just saying that when something like that happens and you're trying to take that in, because as a kid, I had a grandparent die, but you're trying, I just remember the shock of it, and then you're trying, and then all the funerals, and you become aware at that life can stop tomorrow. Life can stop in an hour. And you better appreciate things now. And as you
100%.
said, you better make sure you don't take time to say the things you want to say.
Yeah,
And,
man.
and if you have those friendships and if you have those people around you, and I don't mean to suggest that you should be thinking that every moment, oh, this could be the last second, this could be the last
Oh,
second,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but it certainly makes you aware of how quickly things can be taken away. And so,
100%.
and I mean, and clearly, I mean, you were in a situation where it wasn't. There's life, and then you just saw the instability of a government and things at risk, and somebody in a room is telling you, this is it for you, and that's when you think, okay, maybe it wasn't such a good decision to be doing this. But yeah, just that it's a really strange thing when someone your own age dies when you're young. I know when my brother was 15, a friend of his froze to death, and he was out hunting. And when they had to lower the casket into the grave, that was for the six pallbearers who were all his friends. That was just that shock that we all expect to make it to 80 or 90 or whenever that time comes, but there's just something so strange about death at an early age.
Oh, yeah. You get me? I thought Sudan for me was enough. I had seen it all. I'd been through it all. Just, so much bullshit going on. I thought, you know what? Ireland's going to be a piece of cake. It's Europe. It's heaven for us. You're coming from Africa to Europe. But no, it humbled me. People have it hard here as well. Like, it's not an easy world. And I realized you shouldn't compare struggles at all.
Right. Yeah. That is so true. And it is the thing though that if you're working for your next meal and you're having to
Yeah.
support yourself, there's a lot that puts demands on you, and they're good demands, but
Yes.
it definitely opens your eyes up, just as you said, that everybody participates in the struggle, whether you're from Sudan or Ireland or any other place.
Exactly.
And I wanted to follow up on that. Is that
Mm.
how does that shape you in the terms that these are big things? I mean, you can't get bigger
Mm.
than life or death, right, as far as the impact it'll have on
Of
you.
course, man.
This is not
Yeah, man.
about. This is not about. And I don't mean to dismiss this, that you'll be frustrated about whether you're in a basketball game and you lost, or you don't make the basketball team,
Mm.
or you don't get a job
Yeah.
that you wanted, or you don't get an internship that you wanted. This is on a much
Mm.
higher. This is much bigger.
Of
And
course, man.
how does that kind of thing shape you? And that as negative all that negative stuff went on, what have you been able to take out of it to go, well, I was in it, and what has it altered perspective, or has it shaped perspective?
So it made me appreciate life 10 times more, if anything, and also understand that, hey, yo, man, like, it's real, man. People, yeah, man, it's real. This is real life, man. Life could be taken at any moment. You could be marching in a protest, get shot at. You could even slip on a banana, for God's sake, and die. So it's like appreciating life. I think appreciating life, and also, being humble.
Are you able to, when something comes up personally, that you can go,
Mhm.
am I really going to get upset about this? Again, the Irish, my knickers really be in a twist? Should I be so bothered by a grade, or that this person
No,
is
yeah,
acting like
okay.
this? I mean, does that aid
No.
you in it? And I know you're 22, so it's different than me thinking about it at 57. So I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
100%. But I think the answer to your question is no, not really. I think, like, despite all that, of course, I look at things and no, the answer is actually yes, because I look at things and I'm like, okay, I'm still like, for example, I got a bad grade on a test not long ago, but many years ago, before all that, I would have been like, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. But after certain experiences, it's like, and growing up, seeing the stuff that we were seeing, I say Alhamdulillah, like, thanks to God. I'm grateful. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, no matter what. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Right,
grateful for it. No matter. So it
right,
humbled me, like I said. It's a humbling thing. No matter what you go through in life, hey man, I'm grateful for it. Be it a bad grade or, something tragic happens in my life. Like, for example, if I don't want to dive in too deep, but I had lost someone recently in the war, but having already experienced loss, my friend getting shot or whatnot, I look at it now and I'm like, okay, what? It hurts and I was in pain, but hey, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. He's in a better place now. I have to continue to honor him and honor his legacy in a better way. Rather than many years ago, I cried my eyes out and can't lie, mentally really messed me up until last year, maybe until now. But like, I've grasped the fact that, hey man, this is life. You must, do what you need to do to honor them and move forward without,
right,
you know what
right.
I'm trying to say, I think.
I do, and there's also, I can't remember if it was a Stoic or a Buddhist, or who was talking about this, and this
Oh yeah,
is
we
a
spoke about this in the last one. It was a stoic, I think you said, yeah.
that the idea of, if somebody passes, no matter
Oh
who
yeah.
it is, and this is a tough one if it's a child and all that, but they were explaining that the way, maybe it was the person who it happened to, but they were introduced to either a Stoic ideal or a Buddhist ideal, but that you really focused on that you got to appreciate that person while they were there. And
Yeah, man.
so when you're thinking about your friends who have passed, to be able to grieve, but at the same time just really appreciate that you got to spend that time with them, which hopefully makes you better at the people that you are with now, going, I know
Yes,
this can end in 10 minutes. I know this can end
exactly.
when you walk
Exactly
out the
that, man.
door, but I want to appreciate this now. I mean, when somebody comes in and talks to you, it's just that thing. No, let me give you my attention. I know
Exactly.
I want to make sure I appreciate this moment. I'm saying all this to you,
Exactly.
and I'm feeling like I better go take my wife out to dinner tonight. I'm actually going to conclude the
Mm,
podcast.
I
We've
love
had a
it.
lot, and I know there will be more things that we can talk about in the future.
100%. This was
So
lovely. I enjoyed
which we
this.
will do that. So I'm going to say to, and I know that you said I said it correctly at the beginning,
Hmm.
so I feel a little bit of pressure when I'm
Hmm.
about to do this. But Wasil,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on a Future for Fellows podcast, and I look forward to
Oh,
talking
sorry.
to you
Oops.
more in
Uh-huh.
the future.
I'm looking forward to it as well. I just want to say this, I've been asked questions here today that I haven't been asked ever. And I can't lie, this was, if anything, the best quote unquote therapy session. I've never done therapy, but this felt like therapy. And I have to give this to you. You are a good talker and you are a good, you know how to ask questions. You know how to bring out that side to people. So I'd say this podcast is going to prosper for sure. And I can't wait to see where this goes. And Scott, you are amazing. Thank you for doing this
Well,
for the
thank you.
men that need this. Men need this. And you're doing good for society. Thank you.
Oh, well,
And I'm
thank
glad
you.
if I could contribute.